Hello. So now next we go for the REST service layer. Uh, in the example of HumanaEthic for the activity, so it's the activity controller that I'm going to show you the implementation. For the example of creating an activity, in this case is called register activity. So this is on top of the service layer. So as you have seen, the service layer is transactional and executes the main layer and returns DTOs. Okay, so this guy receives the DTOs and basically provides web services that can be used from outside the application. And to outside, so we are going to use REST for the communication. We're going to see these, we're going to show the presentation layer. And so we need to return JSON objects. But actually, Spring Boot framework automates most of it. So I'm going to show you how is done the implementation. Another thing that is the responsibility of this layer is to verify to do access control. So because now someone from outside is invoking and you want to be sure that it has the right token. So it is authenticated and it's a volunteer that is already authenticated, or it is a member, or so you need to check who is the person and if he has the right to do what he intends to do, and we are going to program what we have called access control in this layer. So the code is very small because Spring Boot is going to do a lot for you. So it's activity controller there, and basically we have this REST controller, okay, and in this REST controller we put a global request mapping. So it's the URL, the URI should be activities. And then we, for each of the web services, we may add something, okay? In our case, that is basically a create. For create, we use post and you don't add anything else. So you just receive this. And if it is a post, Spring Boot invokes this method. Of course, first, it does authorization. So it verifies if the who's invoking has the right to do it. Okay. Look, for the same URI, okay, we have a get, just to get activities, so the list of activities, and we have a post, in this case, create an activity. But let's look just our case. It's very simple. So here I convert the parameters. In this principle, is something that Spring Boot gives me, and inside this principle I can get information that comes with a token. So I get information about who's the user invoking it, and so I use the principle to get the ID of the user. If you remember, afterwards I send the ID in the service invocation, and I try to find it in the database, whether this guy actually exists in the database. So but that's what we have already tested. And another thing is that it's a post in the request body. So we have this annotation to receive is a Spring Boot annotation for the web service. In this annotation, I define the DTO I want to receive. And basically what I do, I just invoke this and I return the value. Look, I'm going to return the DTO, and then everything is automatic. Actually, this is converted to JSON. So this is converted to JSON automatically. The same way, what actually I receive is JSON, that it's automatically converted to DTO here by the framework. So it's pretty simple. What's left to see is the access control. And here I say that the only users that can create activities should have the role of member. And that's the most simpler way to do access control. Look, for instance, here I'm saying that any user, independent if it is authenticated or not, can get the list of activities. So I have no pre-authorized condition there. More complex situations is this. For instance, in this case, I want to update an activity. Although I allow any user to create an activity, because I identify here through the user ID, I'm going to create activity in the institution of the user, so no problem. In this case, I want to update an activity, I need to be sure that the member is member of that institution. So it's not enough to say that is member, but it should have this permission. It should be, it's the activity ID, it should be an activity member of these associated with this activity ID. What is the activity ID? Is another type of parameter we can receive from the request. So we have seen the request body, and this is called the path variable. Why? Because it is in the path. So actually what I'm expecting here is /activities/activity ID, which is a number. So it's an int that I expect to receive there. Okay? So what's left to see is basically how is this implemented. This is implemented in config, in permission evaluator. And here, look at these parameters. So these are the two parameters. So the target domain object and the permission correspond to activity ID and this string. What is there is injected by Spring, and it is authentication that again allows me to get the user that is trying to do this. And this is my access control role. So from this, I get the ID, and from this, so I get the activity ID, I get the permission. And if the permission is activity member, which actually is the only one that is implemented here, so that the activity member is there. If it is activity member, what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the ID to query the database to get the activity. And once I have the activity in the database, it's very easy just to check if the institution of this activity is the same. So the ID is the same that I go to the member. So what is the one? This is the user that has done the request, the post. And I go to this user and I see if the institution is the same. And if it is the same, I return true. It can execute. If it is different one, I return false. And if I return false, actually this service or this web service is gonna return a 404 error. That means that is something like forbidden access. Okay, that's it.